A battleship larger than the Titanic lies broken on the ocean floor. For decades, nobody knew exactly where it was, until one day, deep underwater cameras revealed something terrifying: the Tirpitz. Just hearing that name sent shivers down the spines of Allied naval commanders during World War II. This monster of steel was Hitler's secret weapon, a floating fortress so dangerous that Winston Churchill himself became obsessed with destroying it, and when it finally went down in a Norwegian fjord in 1944, it took nearly 1,000 men with it. But here's the thing: the exact location and condition of the wreck remained a mystery for over 6 decades. What was found down there would reveal secrets nobody expected. Let me paint you a picture of what the Tirpitz actually was. This wasn't just any warship. This was the largest battleship ever built by a European navy. Longer than 3 football fields, 42,000 tons of pure destructive power, 8 massive 15-inch guns that could obliterate targets from over 20 miles away, armor plating so thick that conventional bombs just bounced off like pebbles. The Tirpitz was the sister ship to the Bismarck. Now, if you know anything about naval warfare, you know the Bismarck was already a nightmare for the Royal Navy. In May 1941, the Bismarck sank HMS Hood in just 8 minutes. Over 1,400 British sailors died. The entire Royal Navy went into a frenzy hunting down the Bismarck, and they eventually got it. But the Tirpitz was even more advanced, slightly heavier, better protected, and the Germans learned from every mistake they made with the Bismarck. The British Admiralty knew they had a serious problem on their hands. As long as the Tirpitz existed, it tied down enormous British naval resources. Think about it. The Tirpitz didn't even have to leave port to be effective. Just knowing it was out there, somewhere in the Norwegian fjords, meant the Royal Navy had to keep huge fleets on standby. Battleships, aircraft carriers, destroyers, all waiting and watching. Because if the Tirpitz ever broke out into the Atlantic shipping lanes, it could slaughter convoy after convoy of merchant ships bringing vital supplies from America to Britain. Churchill called the Tirpitz the loneliest ship in the world, but he also desperately wanted it destroyed. He sent memo after memo demanding action. The Royal Navy tried everything: submarine attacks, commando raids, airstrikes. Again and again they tried, and again they failed. In September 1943, midget submarines managed to damage the Tirpitz with limpet mines. The ship was out of action for months, but it survived. The Germans repaired it, and there it sat in Norway, a constant threat, a psychological weapon as much as a physical one. By 1944, the Tirpitz had moved to Tromsø Fjord in northern Norway. This was even further north, closer to the Arctic. The Germans thought it would be safer there. They surrounded the ship with smoke generators and anti-aircraft guns. They placed it in shallow water on purpose. If it was hit, it would settle on the bottom rather than capsize, making it easier to repair or at least salvage the guns. But the Royal Air Force had a new weapon, a bomb so massive it seemed impossible: the Tallboy. 12,000 pounds, nearly 6 tons of explosive power, designed by engineer Barnes Wallis, the same genius who created the bouncing bombs used in the Dambusters raid. The Tallboy wasn't meant to score a direct hit. It was designed to penetrate deep into the ground or water beside a target, then explode underground, creating a massive shockwave that would destroy foundations and structures from below. An earthquake bomb. On November 12, 1944, 32 Lancaster bombers from RAF Bomber Command took off from Scotland. They flew over 1,000 miles to northern Norway. The weather was clear. The smoke screens around the Tirpitz failed. The bombers had a perfect view. At least 2 Tallboy bombs scored direct hits. One punched straight through the ship's armored deck. The massive explosion detonated the forward ammunition magazine. A colossal fireball erupted. The entire bow of the ship disintegrated. The Tirpitz rolled over and capsized within minutes. Of the nearly 2,000 crew on board, over 1,000 died. Many were trapped inside as the ship turned turtle. Some managed to cut holes in the exposed hull from the outside, but rescue efforts were chaotic and desperate. The pride of the German Navy was gone, but where exactly did it end up? What did the wreck look like? For decades, these questions had no clear answers. After the war ended, the Tirpitz wreck sat in Tromsø Fjord like a massive steel tombstone. The Norwegian and German governments eventually agreed to salvage operations. Between 1948 and 1957, a Norwegian company slowly cut up and removed most of the visible wreckage. They used explosives and cutting equipment to break the massive hull into manageable pieces. It was dangerous, difficult work, but valuable. All that steel could be sold for scrap. The problem was that the salvage operation was incomplete. Large sections of the ship remained underwater, buried in the mud and silt of the fjord floor. The exact layout and condition of what was left behind remained unclear. Sure, people knew roughly where the Tirpitz went down, but the detailed picture, that was missing. For years, the wreck site was mostly forgotten. It became a footnote in history books. Divers occasionally explored parts of the wreck, but the visibility in the fjord is terrible. Dark water, thick silt, strong currents. Diving on the Tirpitz wreck was dangerous and disorienting. Without modern technology, creating an accurate map of the debris field was nearly impossible. Here at the Imperial War Museums, we've always been interested in preserving and understanding the full story of World War II. Not just the politics and strategy, but the human experiences and physical evidence. Wrecks like the Tirpitz are time capsules. They tell stories that documents alone cannot. As technology advanced, new possibilities emerged: side-scan sonar, remote-operated vehicles equipped with high-definition cameras, three-dimensional mapping systems. By the early 2000s, it became feasible to conduct detailed underwater surveys of wreck sites that were previously too difficult to document properly. Various expeditions began exploring the Tirpitz site with modern equipment. What they found was both fascinating and heartbreaking. The wreck wasn't just lying neatly on the bottom, it was scattered, broken into multiple sections spread across a wide area. Some pieces were massive, others were fragments. The force of the Tallboy bombs and the subsequent salvage work had turned what was once the mightiest battleship in Europe into a chaotic debris field. One of the most significant discoveries was just how much damage those Tallboy bombs actually caused. The direct hits had ripped through multiple decks. The explosion of the forward magazine had torn the bow section completely off. When the ship capsized, various parts broke away due to structural failure. Turrets, superstructure, sections of hull plating, all scattered across the fjord floor. The surveys also revealed human stories frozen in time. Personal items, equipment still in place. In some sections, you could see where crew members had tried desperately to escape. Cut marks on bulkheads where trapped sailors hammered and carved, trying to break through before the water or smoke got them. For the families of the men who died on the Tirpitz, these discoveries brought mixed emotions. Some found closure knowing the final moments of their loved ones. Others found the details too painful, but all agreed that the story needed to be told accurately and respectfully. The detailed mapping also revealed something unexpected. Parts of the Tirpitz that salvagers thought they had removed were actually still there, just buried under decades of sediment. Sections of the engine rooms, portions of crew quarters, even some of the smaller guns and equipment. The fjord had slowly consumed the wreck, covering it with layers of organic matter and silt. Environmental concerns also became part of the story. The Tirpitz still contains oil, ammunition, and other hazardous materials. As the wreck deteriorates, these pollutants slowly leak into the fjord ecosystem. Norwegian authorities have had to monitor the site to prevent environmental damage. It's a reminder that the consequences of war don't end when the fighting stops. From a historical perspective, the detailed surveys allowed us to understand exactly how effective the Tallboy bombs were. Military historians could analyze the structural damage and compare it to theoretical models. The data proved that Barnes-Wallace's earthquake bomb concept worked even better than expected. This influenced post-war thinking about weapons development and defensive strategies. The surveys also revealed details about German naval engineering, how the armor was arranged, how damage control systems were laid out, what worked and what didn't when the ship was under catastrophic attack. For naval architects and military planners, the Tirpitz wreck became a case study in both construction and destruction. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when high-definition video footage from the wreck was finally shown to the public. Seeing the massive gun turrets lying on their sides, half buried in silt, the enormous propellers still attached to broken sections of the stern, the torn and twisted metal where the Tallboy bombs punched through supposedly impenetrable armor. One image in particular struck people. A clock on a bulkhead stopped at the exact moment the ship capsized. Time literally frozen at the instant of disaster. It's one thing to read about 1,000 men dying when a battleship sinks. It's another thing entirely to see the physical evidence of that moment preserved underwater. The detailed surveys answered a question that had lingered for 65 years. We now knew exactly what happened to every major section of the Tirpitz. We knew where it all ended up. The ghost ship that haunted Norway's fjords finally revealed all its secrets. The story of the Tirpitz is really several stories woven together. It's a story of engineering ambition. The Germans wanted to build an unsinkable ship, and they came close. It's a story of strategic impact. One ship tied down huge Allied resources for years without firing its main guns in anger even once. It's a story of innovation in warfare. The Tallboy bomb represented a completely new approach to attacking hardened targets. And ultimately, it's a story of human tragedy. Thousands of men on both sides died because of this one ship. The detailed underwater surveys that finally documented the wreck site weren't just about satisfying historical curiosity. They were about completing the historical record, about giving those lost sailors a proper memorial, about understanding what actually happened in the final moments of one of World War II's most significant naval actions. Here at the Imperial War Museums, we believe that understanding the details matters. It's easy to reduce history to simple narratives. The good guys versus the bad guys. Victory and defeat. But the truth is always more complex and more human. The Tirpitz wreck reminds us that behind every statistic, every strategic decision, every weapons system, there were real people living and dying. The wreck site in Tromsø Fjord is now protected. It's recognized as a war grave. Diving there requires permission and must be done respectfully. The Norwegian government, the German government, and organizations like ours work together to preserve the site and honor the memory of those who died there. The Tirpitz may be gone, but its story continues to teach us about the costs of war, about the limits of technology, about human courage and human tragedy. The detailed surveys that finally revealed the complete wreck site after 65 years gave us the final chapter in a story that began when the ship was launched in 1939, a story that encompasses some of the most dramatic naval warfare of the 20th century. If you want to see more untold stories from World War II, hit subscribe. If you are a World War veteran or carry the story of one, your experiences matter. Share your story using the link in the description, and we may honor it by featuring it on our YouTube channel.